I'm Joseph,
And I'm Nick.
and this is Fish Jelly.
Yep. Yep.
We're recording this on Zoom because Nick is in the state of Minnesota,
I'm in a state of Minnesota.
the land of 10,000 lakes.
A state of repression.
So if a person is watching or listening to this on Spotify, they can watch the video as well. And
Oh, yes.
the cat is here saying hello to you.
There she is.
She doesn't know what's going on.
Well, she might be in the best state of all.
Look at your dad, Mama. Look at her.
Don't
Anyway,
you put her on the spot. She can't act.
she can't act. How was your Thanksgiving?
Good. A nice long day of food and liquor.
We
How
were
about you?
saying we were saying yesterday that it's funny, this tradition of spending, for some people it's like a week of preparation, an all day of cooking. Toni Braxton was on the Jennifer Hudson show and she said her family, they start preparing like almost 2 weeks before, like cleaning the chitterlings and freezing everything and then it all culminates with like 30 minutes of feeding.
Gluttony. Yeah.
Yeah, gluttony, and then everyone passes out, and then they wake up and eat more. So it's actually, I don't know, for someone like me, Thanksgiving is triggering, and it's just, yeah, I
Yeah.
never feel good after Thanksgiving.
Well, and then, when you're talking about family, it's can be triggering in a lot of other ways as well. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's funny how the preparation that goes into just, it doesn't take long to eat. And I'm a
no.
family of fast eaters, so yeah, I always feel bad.
Well, since I was home alone and my mom is here, we went to have like a late Thanksgiving lunch at a restaurant in Santa Monica, which was really nice. It was on Ocean Drive and it faces out onto the ocean. So, and we were seated like, we didn't ask to be seated in the prime spot, but the lady just put us there, I think, because it was just two of us. So we got to sit like right and look out. So that was nice. And the food was good. It was, I think, very overpriced, but also it's Thanksgiving. So I was appreciative of people willing to work that day. But yeah. Any food memories you want to share? Anything ultra delicious?
Corn.
Corn. Nick, Nick makes a corn casserole.
I wouldn't call it a casserole. I
I would almost say it's like if you took cornbread and made it like a rich,
moist
like tres leches cheddar corn cake. I don't know.
uh, corn delight. I don't
Corn
know.
delight.
It's something like kind of retooled of something. I don't even know. I don't even know where that shit came together. But
It's super simple, and every time people have it, they're like, "I need the recipe." This is so good, and
yeah,
it's like four ingredients.
4 or 5, all very healthy and good for you. But
Well, I mean, it's basically sugar and cheese and corn
and cornbread mix
and cornbread mix.
and a lot of sugar. But yeah, I made that for my sister doesn't even like turkey for whatever reason. She wanted that, so and that didn't get put into the oven until 3 p.m. So it was a late day, and everything else nice and homemade and traditional kind of. But yeah, it was good.
I don't normally like cranberry sauce. I would never put cranberry sauce on my plate, but of course, everyone wants to give you cranberry sauce. And the restaurant, I don't know if it was just because it never occurred to me, because I always think, what would I put the cranberry sauce on? And the plate I received, they had this homemade stuffing, which was excellent. And it was like kind of on top of the cranberry sauce. So I ate that together and I thought it was splendid.
Splendid.
Splendid. And then for dessert,
Made.
for
Sorry.
dessert, oh no, I was going to say for dessert, we had the option of chocolate cake or pumpkin cheesecake. So we had one of each, and those were really good too. I was very pleased with everything we had. Yeah. So, and we were done by 3 o'clock.
Nice.
Okay.
A respectable hour to be done gorging.
Yeah. Uh, and then I know I have a friend who would always say for Thanksgiving, I'm gonna lose it. I want to say it exactly how she always says it. Uh, like happy. No, I'm late. Oh, well, I lost it. That's lame. So think about the like decolonization or happy like colonizers. I don't know. But moving on. So the UK Drag Race is over, series 4.
I haven't finished it.
Do you want to guess who was in the top 4?
I thought I knew that, but
There was the top 5.
well, Black Pepper,
Yeah.
uh, and who else?
Cheddar Gorgeous,
Oh yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Danny Beard,
Oh yeah.
Jombers Blonde,
Hmm.
and then Pixie Polite was top 5, and then she got let go. So the top 4 is just Danny Beard, Cheddar Gorgeous, Black Pepper, and Jombers Blonde. So how do you think that went?
I'm guessing Danny Beard won.
That's right.
Oh, there you go. Well, he was, uh, yeah, an exceptional queen.
Uh, Cheddar Gorgeous did really well in the
Yeah.
final challenge. And you know how sometimes Rule will say, like, if there's a top 4, like, oh, I need all 4 of you to lip sync.
Hmm.
Like immediately she's like, well, Jombers and Black Pepper, you are not this is not your time.
Oh well,
It was very obvious that Cheddar and Danny were in the top. But yeah, Danny won. So that's nice. And then the final episode, after they did their challenge, the 3 previous winners were there to talk to them, which I thought was nice. And then I know we're not super excited about Canada's Drag Race, but the most recent episode, episode 2, had me crying because Justin Trudeau shows up in the workroom to talk to the queens. And I thought that was really amazing because he's a world leader and he's just in this workroom saying very like nice things and
mhm.
yeah, just being very yeah, like accepting and I mean that's pretty major. And
Uh,
then oh, go ahead.
no, that I agree.
Uh I do have to say his voice is not maybe I've never paid attention to how he speaks, but he has a little bit of a speech impediment. But he's really cute. And then at the very end of his visit, because the queens were kind of hitting on him and he took it very well. And then at the end, Brooklyn was the one sort of mediating the experience. And at the end, he goes, oh, so when am I going to meet Rupaul? I thought that was funny.
Oh, so he's funny. Okay.
Yeah, like not on this show. Okay, someone sent me information on an organization called Voluntary Human Extinction Movement. So I was reading all about it. The person who's kind of the face of it is this man named Les Knight, but anyway, their mission statement is may we live long and die out. And then sort of a summary of what their ideology is. Phasing out the human species by voluntarily ceasing to breed will allow Earth's biosphere to return to good health. Crowded conditions and resource shortages will improve as we become less dense. So their website, the Voluntary Human Extinction Movement, it looks like a geosite setup, like it's very old, like 1999. But there are a million links to like different information. Which I found really interesting. Not to be controversial, but part of why I would say I don't want kids is there are too many people in the world. So this kind of resonated with me, but I was thinking more like, a question you can never ask people is like, why would they want to have children when the world is, kind of in the state it's in and we're overcrowded? Because, it's not couth to question like someone's desire to, well, especially someone's desire to give birth, because that's, I mean, what's more natural than that? But yeah, it's interesting that even with 8 billion people in the world and just like our resources dwindling, quality of life dwindling, we like it's still not appropriate to ask like why do you think it makes sense to just keep adding more to the pile? But
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't want to speculate on why, but it'd be interesting to hear people talk. I mean, I guess no one's going to talk honestly about like I'm just selfish and want a kid of my own. I don't know, but
Well, yeah, nobody wants to say that, but for a lot of people, that is an underlying force. But sure.
well, because I was listening, like I was on TikTok watching these videos of these girls like going on about how like the babies are so cute and how they want a baby, and it's like, well, just because it's cute. Every time I see a dog, I want one, but I know that that's not appropriate for my lifestyle. Like, yes,
Hmm.
they're cute, but anyway, I feel like that's a hot button issue.
For sure.
Well, moving on to films that were released we didn't cover.
Oh, that's a transition.
Well, there's nothing for Sorry to This Man. Oh, I did have someone message me and we had this long discussion about like loneliness. And so it was an older gay man
Hmm.
who watches our channel and um, was like going on and on about that, and then was kind of getting flirtatious, and I like shot that down. And then I got this
Hmm.
long diatribe about how no one likes him and he has spent, I could read the messages verbatim, but I won't. Like basically that no one likes him and that he hasn't had sex in like 13 years, and that he's 60 and when he was like 20, no, yeah, maybe like in his mid to late 20s, contracted HIV and all the stuff that came along with that. But of course, now is healthy and living. But yeah, it was kind of upsetting because it took me back. It's been many, many years, like over 20 years that I've been around people. Well, I mean, I knew a couple of people like that in Minnesota, but it's been a long time since I've been around someone who doesn't see, how do I say this? Like, it's not true that no one likes you. It's that you're fixated on people who are not interested in you, and you're
That
interpreting that. And certainly the people who are interested in you, you're rebuffing them the way people have rebuffed you, and you're not putting that into the equation. I don't know. It was just really odd to talk to like someone older than myself and have them talk like a 16-year-old.
uh-huh. Yeah.
And yeah, so I I'm stumbling because I thought I was going to talk about it and then I didn't write it down, so I'm not prepared. But it was it was pretty wild that he was being so like self-deprecating and unreasonable.
Well, and then not also realizing that you can't guilt me into sex or being sexual. And I think that
Right.
I think that maybe not it's not always conscious, but yes, I've had a lot of men do that to me too, where that's almost the next ploy. And when I was young and naive, there were a lot of instances where an experience happened because of that, because I felt like I owed somebody something for liking me, and I had to learn to get over that. But
Yeah.
but again, I resent, yes, of course, being empathetic, but I resent the situation that can occur, because that just because somebody doesn't want to sleep with you doesn't mean you're it's a wasted experience. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think some people put a lot of value, like their self-worth is tied into their like sexual appeal,
Yeah, it's validation. Yeah.
which
Hmm.
is really unhealthy, I think. And like you said, the value of an interaction gets diminished because it doesn't end with, you know, this thing that someone wants from you or you want from them.
Right.
But it was, I could go on and on, but I'm not prepared. I just, it had been a very long time since someone was talking to me that way. It took me back to when I was in college and hearing the way people would talk and sulk about not getting to interact with someone they wanted to interact with. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
These are hard transitions. I'm still a little groggy, but okay, so we can go on to films released we didn't cover. Fantasy football.
Oh, I desires to write about a couple things I watched, but I didn't. But one of them was fantasy football with Omari Hardwick and Kelly Rowland, directed by Anton Cropper, which I watched. I think I was still at home when I saw that, but
did you like it?
It was okay. It's using a very familiar formula and not, Kelly Rowland.
Was she better than in The Curse of Bridge Hollow?
Yes, but she's also supposed to be, she just can't be a mom. She just doesn't give mom vibes on screen. Like, I don't.
Well, to be clear, she is a mom, but I agree with what you're saying. I think she comes across a little too yeah, we have to be careful because it's not that she's so pretty and put together she can't be a mom, but yeah, there's something because we watched another movie with her where she was supposed to be someone's mom, and it just felt like you are not giving. I don't think it's that she's not a nurturer caretaker. I just don't think she has strong acting ability.
Yeah, she seems kind of detached in that regard. But I like Omari Hardwick. He plays this football player that's kind of reached his sell-by date almost. And there's a scene where a Madden game is struck by lightning that both him and his daughter are arguing over, and then the daughter discovers that she has the ability to have powers over her father through the game while they play. So it's very familiar and at the same time far-fetched and doesn't bother to explain itself all that well. But it's okay.
I'm assuming there are sweet moments.
There are sweet moments, but they also feel a little bit phoned in because of the familiarity of this device that's obviously unexplainable, used to for this family to learn very basic lessons about I'm a young girl discovering who I am, and you're a father who needs to move on from himself. And again, Kelly Rowland had nothing to do. But if you like any of those people, of course, it's worth a watch.
Speaking of Omari Hardwick, stop. I'm going to dole out advice. Stop telling people who they look like, because it's been like it's never good in either direction, because if you tell me I look like someone who I don't think is very good looking, that's insulting. And then if you tell me I look like someone much more attractive, like an Omari Hardwick, then it's like, what am I supposed to say? I do not look like Omari Hardwick. We're both brown, and we have similarities, but I do not look like that man. So yeah, I feel so uncomfortable when people say shit like that, because it's like, on what planet do I look like Omari Hardwick? So it's like, because there's a lot loaded into that. Like, you have this fantasy of this person, and because I'm kind of adjacent to that, like, it doesn't feel good to be told that I look like a better looking version of like, because you're just putting something on me that doesn't.
Sure, but understanding that is not the intention, I'm sure.
No, but that's why I'm saying I think people need to think about. I know I compare people all the time, but I feel like that's my job. But and I don't know these people. But yeah, to tell someone directly like who they look like is like, it probably won't be well received. I might smile and be like, okay. But I'm gonna have an attitude. Okay, next is something called Devotion.
Yeah, you did straight up refuse to go to the press screening of this with, it's directed by
Why are you trying to control me?
I'm not. Speaking of jobs and expectations, it's not about control.
I can't watch everything. I have to choose. And this shit did not look good to me at all.
And okay, sure. Directed by J.D. Dillard. I think I saw his last film, Sweetheart, starring Jonathan Majors and Glenn Powell as U.S. Navy fighter pilots during the Korean War.
All right. Strange World.
Strange World. I'm trying to think now. What was that? It's a co-directed by Don Hall and Key Nguyen, and it's an animated film. And Gabrielle Union, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Jabuki Young White have voices, but I actually don't even know what that's about. But that came out.
Lady Chatterley's Lover.
Lady Chatterley's Lover, which is a very scandalous D.H. Lawrence novel, of course, and periodically gets remade. And here we have another remake that premiered on Netflix, I think right before Thanksgiving, directed by Laura de Clermont-Tonnerre, whose last film was The Mustang, starring, I think, Matthias Schoenaerts, which had some nice moments, but I thought was kind of a so-so film. I liked this latest. I like Jack O'Connell as the lover, and there are some enjoyable moments, but and it is very sexual. It's a very sexual novel, to the degree where I was shocked to see, what was that Stephen King out, Mr. Harrigan's Phone with Donald Sutherland, where he has this child reading that book out loud to him. It's like, oh no, that's
Yeah, Jaden Martell's character is supposed to be like,
like
I mean,
13, reading
he's
this.
younger than that, right? Because he's in yeah, he's like an adolescent or like 13 reading this book to this old man.
Yes, and that's it. I still remember because I read that book secretly, and I was probably in like 6th or 7th grade, and it's very sexual. But anyway, there are frequently adaptations of it. This was a decent one. It reminded me of several previous ones that I haven't watched, but it's worth a look.
And there's male frontal nudity.
You do see Jack O'Connell naked, yeah.
The Swimmers.
The Swimmers, Sally El Hosseini. I think I reviewed her previous film, My Brother the Devil, which I remember kind of liking. And this is
going to be a chapter in my sister's book.
This is about two Syrian sisters, I believe, but I did not watch it.
The Corridors of Power.
That's a
Story of
new.
my butt. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You'd like
That's actually really fast. I don't know why I said that. That wouldn't be my book title, but go ahead.
Okay. I'd say it's a place I'm locked out of. Dror Mora, the documentarian, who I've seen one of his previous works, The Gatekeepers, which is pretty interesting. This is a new documentary about how the U.S. knew about all the shit going on in the Soviet Union and kind of just ignored it. But yeah, that came out.
Freedom on Fire, Ukraine's Fight for Freedom. That's a terrible title.
Yes, and it's actually a follow-up to a previous documentary, I'm forgetting the title of, on Ukraine from Evgeny Afanevsky. But of course, this one, his previous documentary is from 2015. So of course, this one is incorporating the war on Ukraine that's still underway.
Leonore Will Never Die.
This sounded really interesting. First time director from the Philippines, Martika Ramirez Escobar. I think it played out at Sundance. And I think it's about a woman that hits her head and then becomes a star in her own movie inside her head. It looked fascinating. We have a screener for it. I still kind of want to watch that, but that came out.
Lastly, White Noise.
Noah Baumbach, who opened Venice this year with this film, with the Don DeLillo adaptation of a very notable novel, which I thought the adaptation had some ups and downs. I liked Adam Driver, thought Greta Gerwig was a little miscast, but it had some interesting things about it. I think Netflix is releasing it theatrically first before it's streaming, but it's a Netflix production.
Okay, movies we watched for fun. I've mentioned that I like the podcast Bad Gay Movies, and I'll often watch. So it's they review bad movies with gay themes, and I will often like seek out the film to watch. And every time I do, I'm like, God, this is bad, which I think is funny because like someone just spent 40 minutes telling me it's bad, and then I watch it like, oh, this is terrible. But I watched a movie called Out of Body, and that was Bad Gay Movie's most recent episode. And it's written, directed, and by this guy named Jason Gaffney, who's also the star. And it was fascinating how poorly done this movie was and how ridiculous the story was. But it did make me think that making, like self-producing a little indie film is very doable. And I actually liked, it's not even worth going. This movie's, it is available on Amazon Prime. And the star plays this guy who's in love with his best friend, but like there's like a Halloween party and someone brings like this possessed globe that conjures this demon that takes over the body of the best friend. So now the spirit of the best friend is left like bound to this house with the star. So it's all shot in one location, like in this house. And then it's about them discovering they love each other. And ultimately they lure the demon back to like switch bodies. But it's terribly done. It's supposed to be a comedy, but it's not funny.
Right away, even you describing that to me again, my mind goes to The Ghost and Mrs. Muir with Rex Harrison. And
So that movie was done in 2020. So I watched that movie, and then I saw that he has another film, his first film that he did in 2012, called The Perfect Wedding, which is also available on Amazon Prime. And that movie from 8 years prior somehow, I think, made more sense. It's still terrible, but yeah, I mean, good for this guy. He's also hearing impaired. So, there's some representation there in his first film about showing that he is, like, he speaks ASL. He can also speak. But yeah, those two things were horrible. But shout out to someone making their own movie. Anyway, you watched something called Marty.
Something called Marty. Yeah, the Best Picture winner from 1955, starring Ernest Borgnine, who won his Oscar. I saw it once before in San Francisco, and I probably sent this list to you out of order because another film I watched with my family spurred them to watch Marty over the past couple of days because my dad and sister had never seen it. It's just, it's such a sweet, very touching film. It's about this Italian man, this butcher played by Borgnine, who lives with his mother. He's never really had a relationship, but the community, like 1950s Italian American community, is very judgmental about kind of making him feel like a big, ugly, fat loser. And he just happens to find this meek, kind of mousy woman played by Betsy Blair, who I didn't realize was married to Gene Kelly. That was her first husband, who's also treated like she's a dog, basically. That's the terminology used in the film. There's one line where he's like, "You're not so much of a dog as you think you are." But this is this very touching moment of these two people coming together and finding a genuine connection, even though both of them are kind of allowed to be treated in their own separate communities as if they're nothing. Yeah, and it's one of only 3 films that won both Best Picture in the U.S. and the top prize at Cannes. But yeah, highly recommended if you've never seen Marty.
You put on Alien Resurrection last week. Why did we watch that movie?
It was my birthday, and I completed my letterbox, and it dawned on me that I haven't sat down and watched Alien Resurrection from start to finish in like 14 years. So it felt like time.
So that means I haven't watched it.
You probably did without me.
I don't think I've seen that movie then.
Oh, well.
If I didn't watch it with you, I definitely didn't watch it beforehand. So then I saw Alien Resurrection for the first time last week. And
I don't know. Your memory is terrible. I feel like you probably ran through the Alien series when you were dating me to impress me. I feel like you watched that movie.
I recognize the basketball scene because I remember that from like when the movie came out. I recall that image, and then you had like Premiere magazine cover with Sigourney Weaver and Winona
Ryder, a French Premiere cover. That's one of my favorite Sigourney covers because it's the two of them, and Sigourney has this long hair and looks fantastic.
But I did like it. I think it looks really good. I like the vibe of it. I think the story and how they bring back Sigourney's character who died in Aliens, the second movie.
Alien 3.
Or Alien 3, sorry. I think was clever.
Yes, there are very interesting elements, but it's a bit it's missing some key components, I think, and that as a 13-year-old I would have refused to admit. But rewatching it, it does have some narrative issues for sure, and there are some. I don't think Winona Ryder is very good in it, but
I if I had to give it a score, I'd probably give it like 3.5.
oh damn, that's higher than I gave it. I really like Sigourney in it. I think she's quite fascinating as this hybrid human.
The
But the
worst part of it,
finale,
yeah, the finale with the hybrid alien looked, those practical effects are terrible. Considering the movie looks so good and the actual alien queen looks so good, I was kind of astonished at how bad the hybrid looks. And I also I think, what is his name who plays Hellboy?
Ron Perlman.
I really didn't like Ron Perlman in that movie. I feel like he brought it down a notch. I mean, I like Ron Perlman, but that character being so like over the top, I
He's so. I think that leads into Joss Whedon's screenplay. I think is very much trying to have this kind of funny, biting vibe, and almost every use of comedy in Alien Resurrection is not good.
it's unsuccessful. But yeah, and especially I feel like it's unnecessary because the vibe is so effective, and I think Sigourney's character could have been written to be a little more sinister
Mm-hmm.
because she seems a little like she's in on a joke,
Yeah.
and it's fun to watch because she looks great. That being said, though, for something I wasn't planning on watching, like you just put it on, it did keep my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would still give it 3.5.
No, and I think she looked fantastic. So it's always I love watching a lot of her films from the '90s. I think 'cause I just really loved her look. I still do love her look,
The
but
underwater scene where the alien is swimming, I thought that was really good.
yeah, and of course that's a reference to the Poseidon Adventure, where they have to swim underwater through the boat that has turned upside down.
Well, let's keep it moving. You watched Disclosure?
You watched Disclosure with me.
What is
Let's
that?
let's reboot your memory. Michael Douglas, Demi Moore.
Oh, about sexual harassment.
There you go. Okay. We're all on the same page now. Yes, directed by Barry Levinson, which was, of course, a huge deal in 1994. Michael Crichton wrote the book and sold the movie rights for like $1 million before the book was even published. Uh, this movie, oh my God, I'd never seen it before, but woo!
It is very like heavy-handed. We have a message we want to relay, and it's basically about reverse, like this man being sexually harassed by his female boss. There are a lot of problems with this movie. I think the biggest problem is there the writing is not great to me because I really didn't like that Michael Douglas's character. It the writing is not finessed enough to show how Michael Douglas is also behaving inappropriately in the workplace. So when he
Yes.
gets harassed, that becomes a point in like the mediation that like, well, you also were talking about stuff and you didn't seem to have a problem then. It just feels very like obtuse, and
Well,
it's really spelling things out for us during the mediation.
there's no subtlety and there's no subtext. It's like white male fears of the 1990s.
Yes.
But that are it's like a perfect scenario because he had a previous relationship with the Demi Moore character, which also kind of sanitizes his behavior. Because part of the contention is that she is coming on to him and he is saying no, but he's also aroused.
Right.
That
And then Michael Douglas's his character's wife, I thought her like that character was written poorly, like how she's so upset about like because again they're trying to just reverse everything. So the wife is yelling at him like how like you let this happen, and he's trying to say like no, she came on to me. It's so yeah, it's it's on the level of like an after school special. But it is kind of fun to watch Demi Moore and Michael Douglas just stomp around, I guess.
And by far the most cringing moment has nothing to do with that. It has him because he is developing this, because then they try to fire him for incompetence.
Oh,
He's developing this virtual reality software, and he has to go into the virtual reality and sneak into this hotel room, and she's in another secret location, and she's also in it, and they visualize that by her having this kind of digitized body.
okay. The only reason, like, I would recommend this movie just for that scene, which is like sort of the climax at the end, because there's like a countdown to when Michael Douglas's character can retrieve some files, and
The Malaysian files, yeah.
And Demi Moore's character is deleting these files as he's looking for them in this VR environment. And then we get their avatars in the VR environment, like crossing paths. That shit looks so
And
crunchy.
her coding and deleting the files is like,
Oh my
do it
God. And then how she's coding is like, do it all, do it right now. Like, I don't think
forward
that's,
slash kill Malaysia.
yeah, I'm not a tech person, but that doesn't seem right.
Like,
Okay, you
don't you
watch
just
Julie and
install the
Julia?
program once?
I'll
Huh?
say it again.
Nothing. What's
Oh,
up?
you watch Julie and Julia.
I did on the plane over here, the flight. I had never seen this film and have to say that it might not have been as bad as I was expecting, but it also isn't good. And another, I think, undeserved Meryl Streep nomination for playing Julia Child. Uh,
No?
and Amy Adams doing her best with a role that, because you know what it's about. It's about this woman in 2002 who picks up Julia Child's cookbook, which showed America how to cook French cuisine, and in 1 year's time cooked every single recipe in that book and blogged about it, and became a sensation. And it's a Nora Ephron film, and I do like Nora Ephron for the most part. And I don't know, it has some nice moments, but it also was hokey.
Compulsion?
I also watched this with my parents, directed by Richard Fleischer. Basically, a story about Leopold and Loeb with Dean Stockwell and Bradford Dillman and Orson Welles, all three of whom won, I believe, shared a Best Acting award at Cannes at that film festival. It's about Leopold and Loeb. It's set in 1924 Chicago. Two men who consider themselves to be brilliant, who murder, in reality, a 14-year-old boy, but then get hemmed up because it turns out they weren't so brilliant. And Hitchcock, of course, made a film about this that is better, Rope, but with Jimmy Stewart and Farley Granger. But there are things I liked about it. But Dean Stockwell he was reminding me of young James Franco in this. And it was Orson Welles looked terrible, and again they have makeup on him to make him look older, but he still was only, I think, 44 when he made this, and it's like, whoa, you lived another 40 years. Anyway, it's worth a look. I did enjoy it. I think somebody brought that up in a chat once with us too, about if we'd seen that film. But yeah,
Bad Day at Black Rock.
this is the reason we watched Marty, because we were tired and the runtime was 80 minutes, and it's directed by John Sturges. Spencer Tracy won Best Actor at Cannes and was nominated for Academy Award for this film, one of 9 or whatever. And Ernest Borgnine, who co-starred it with him, would win for Marty that same year. But this movie was dull. It's so dull, and a plot that's used recycled in so many ways in different films. But this man that shows up in this small town, which is like 4 houses, that has a secret, and basically they killed the Japanese American that had a piece of land with gold on it, and tried to make it look like he'd been taken away at an internment camp, circa Pearl Harbor. But it was very dull. But a young Borgnine, Lee Marvin, yeah.
Mysterious Island of Beautiful Women.
Oh, this was a terrible film that really deserves a Mystery Science Theater treatment. But it was the last. It's a TV film from 1979, and it's directed by Joseph Pevney. who I do enjoy his film Female on the Beach, starring Joan Crawford, but it's not it's basically kind of like a plot like Yellow Jackets, where uh, these young girls that are taken out of a Catholic school in French Indochina in 1954 because they're being shot at, get away by the skin of their teeth on a plane, but which crashes, and the one nun that's with them dies. And then 20 years later, some men show up in this island and discover these. There's oh God, what's his name? They see these women and he's like, "That's a white woman." But also, there's one black woman. Rosalind Chow has a part, but there's one black woman played by Jane Kennedy, and her character name, she might be better known for a film she did shortly after that called Body and Soul, but her character's name is Chocolate.
Oh,
It's so stupid. It's clearly written by men, and they're like, what would these stupid women be like that are trapped in this island that grow up into these like sexy nymphets? Because all these girls seem brain dead, and they, even though ostensibly they would have known English and been old enough to know English, they can't speak it correctly. It's so stupid. It was so dumb. Oh my God.
well, lastly, I watched Freddy versus Jason. Speaking of Kelly Rowland, I think that was her first acting role where she uses the F slur. Uh,
Oh
that
yeah.
was, it has its moments, but boy, oh boy.
I watched that once and it was hard to get through, and I don't have a desire to watch it again.
I actually think kind of the bones of the story of how like I mean how the two come together is ridiculous but also fun. But I think like how Freddy has to be brought back by getting people to remember him, works well. I think the Freddy part works much better than the Jason part because then we just get a scene of the mom like telling him like you'll never die, wake up, and okay.
Sounds like a social media allegory.
Yeah, but I would definitely be into I can see what like the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th movies being redone and reborn. I'm into it. I would be into another Nightmare on Elm Street because um like Freddy Krueger is vile. I think I forgot because we watched all of them like what 4 years ago for
Yeah,
Halloween.
back to back, which is a mistake though, because they all kind of blend together like runny eggs. But yeah.
It was a mistake, but in Freddy versus Jason, we get a little montage of how Freddy Krueger came to be. And it's pretty wild to think like 30 years ago watching these movies.
Well, he's a pedophile, wasn't he?
Yeah, but like was like mutilating and torturing these kids and like and I was just a kid watching these movies like, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Like that happens.
Yeah, projects of interest. The Pocket Watch.
Brandy is going to be Cinderella again in The Pocket Watch, directed by Jennifer Fang. So that could be interesting.
Yeah, I like her. I
Yeah.
watched I watched a little like documentary about her daughter who's now a singer. And I have to say, the daughter definitely seems like the kind of kid who grew up with like a famous parent and all the things. And
Moesha.
and her personality was not cute, but
That's unfortunate.
yeah. And then Blade, the remake of Blade.
We might have talked about this
You
already.
have talked about this before, yeah.
Yeah, because Mahershala Ali is going to be Blade, but a director has signed on, and it's Jan Demange, whose film 71 I quite like with Jack O'Connell. And also, I think you were in the room when I watched White Boy Rick. But yeah, he's signed on, so that's interesting. I'm curious to see. Speaking of remaking and rebooting things, I'm curious to see what they'll do with that. But
Well, unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section. Jason David Frank.
one of the Power Rangers, the original Power Rangers, he died.
Yeah. And then Irene Cara died.
What? I didn't see that.
Yeah. She was 63.
She was only
So
63?
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So in Sparkle, how old was she?
The original or the remake?
The original. She's the original Sparkle. God, I didn't know she died.
Wait, Irene Cara is the original Sparkle?
Yeah.
She is. That movie is 1976, so that was 46 years ago. So she would have been 17.
Oh, Irene Cara, that album with her best known song on it. I happened to randomly listen to that after we watched, I think, DC Cab, starring Mr. T. Uh, I think a Joel Schumacher film, because they used that song, The Dream.
Well, to be clear, Irene Cara is a Grammy and Academy Award winning singer. She wrote the song What a Feeling for Flashdance.
Yeah.
And then she did the theme song for the movie Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are her two biggest songs.
Sure, but the Dream was on DC Cab, and I was like, oh, I'd never heard that song before, and I'm like, let me listen. I'd never listened to that album because I think I had on repeat for a couple months Romance '83, and I know I made you listen to that song, which I quite like. And she also did the voice of Snow White in a cartoon that I would watch as a kid, where Ed Asner is also in it. But yeah, I have fond memories of her. That's too bad. She wasn't that old.
Well, in college, Global DJs has a remix of What a Feeling that I would play on repeat, like on repeat. And then, of course, the movie Fame was 1980. I've never seen it, but the TV show Fame was from like 1982 to 87. So I remember it. Huh?
And you know who was on that show?
And then, international pop icon Janet Jackson is in season 4, and she talks about how much she hated filming that show, but partially because she was in a really shitty relationship with James DeBar or El DeBarge. But the song that's used in the TV show is a different singer, like retooling it. So it's not Irene Cara's version, but it made me think I should probably watch Fame, the movie.
Yeah, I've actually never seen that either. But
Yeah.
In Flashdance, I think Flashdance is actually a really fun movie directed by Adrian Lyne.
Flashdance, my very first memory of going to a movie was a drive-in movie, like in the car, and I was probably like, what year was Flashdance?
I think 83.
So I was 5.
It was about that time, yeah.
And we were in the car and we watched Flashdance, and all of a sudden there are, like breasts on the screen. And I remember my mom screaming, like, close your eyes, don't look at it.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay, well, the secret film today was Nick's selection. You selected the 1972 Swedish period drama written and directed by Ingmar Bergman called Cries and Whispers. Why did you choose this movie?
I've been wanting.
Were you trying to tell me something?
No, it's my favorite Ingmar Bergman film, and I think somebody had asked us long ago. Somebody had asked me long ago, like, "Oh, you should show this to Joseph and see what he thinks."
Mm-hmm. I feel you're gonna say I remind you of like things in this movie.
No, I was not thinking, because we watched this separately. I watched it with my family, who I don't know that they loved it, but
yeah, this is not a movie that, well, you're very good at like making people uncomfortable with your movie selections, but yeah, I was thinking this is not a movie to show like your family on Thanksgiving, but okay.
In my world, yes.
But in your world, Nick's really good at changing the air in the room.
Oh boy.
So
I it's only an hour and a half. Notably, I think it played out a competition at Cannes that year, but it received distribution in the U.S. courtesy of Roger Corman, of all people. Excuse me, and received several Oscar nominations, but quite notably was nominated for Best Picture, which was really rare. It's still very rare for a film, a foreign language, an international feature to receive a Best Picture nomination at the Academy Awards. But
well, let me read the synopsis of the movie. When a woman dying of cancer in early 20th century Sweden is visited by her 2 sisters, long repressed feelings between the siblings rise to the surface. So the basic story is there's a lady named Agnes.
Yeah, played
And
by
she has uterine cancer. And
Harry Anderson.
and she's laid up in this mansion in Sweden somewhere with her maid named Anna.
Played by
And,
Kate Solon.
and her two sisters, Maria and Corinne,
Liv Ullmann, Liv Ullmann and Ingrid Tulin.
they show up to be with her. And it is very clear that like they are not particularly close, like physically or emotionally. And Agnes dies. So now the maid is left there with the two sisters. There's a funeral. The husbands of those sisters show up. They have to decide what to do with Anna. So they basically kick her ass to the curb. The end. But I think it's a very well done movie, and the story is very interesting. It's not like it's kind of a miserable story and a miserable, film, but it's very well done. I would say probably the biggest thing I took away from it is how it looks.
Oh, it's Sven Nykvist, who shot many Bergman productions. Yeah, it's beautiful.
The Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they found this mansion and they just lucked out that it has like these red rooms and red carpets, or if they actually did some set design, but like the mansion looks really cool and is shot really well. The way the sisters look, like their hair and how uptight they seem, and then there are a lot of close-ups that I think are really well done. And whoever did these ladies' makeup, they look like Karen, the mean sister. I thought she looked fantastic.
Well, Ingrid Tulin, who's usually a blonde, beautiful woman. Even my mother commented like, "Oh, that woman has a beautiful face. She's very striking." And you know what? You have seen Ingrid before in Return from the Ashes, and you commented on how interesting she was to watch in that film. And I know you have no idea of it, but yeah.
Yeah, usually I find close-ups to be distracting, but in this film, I thought they were very well done. There are also some really great transitions with the use of the color red that worked really well. And then the story is it's very relatable. It's just miserable, but it's
relatable, but there's also lots of abstract themes going on about religion.
okay. I'm just going to go through my notes because we kind of have to wrap it up. But so the film is kind of I don't generally love the use of like flashbacks. Like I'm very easily confused, but I thought this film does it really well. How like something will happen and someone will like for instance, Maria, the sort of like prettier, more flirtatious sister, Agnes's doctor shows up, and then she's being flirtatious with him and she's making out with him. And then we get a flashback to kind of like where their relationship kind of started and how she had an affair with this doctor, which we can get into. But yeah, I thought the use of flashbacks was very effective in this movie.
That doctor played by Erland Josephson, who notably played a different coupling with Liv Ullmann in Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage. But
Agnes is keeping a journal, and I thought it was funny because she's on her deathbed writing about how she doesn't feel well, and I thought, what would my journal look like if I had to write down how I felt every day?
Oh, poor Harriet Anderson, who's fantastic in an earlier Bergman film, Through a Glass Darkly, as well. But it has a very cold, slow lead in until I think the point where she's kind of howling in pain, and then it kind of spirals into all. If you like movies with bitchy, prickly, beautiful women screaming at one another, this is a film that should be in your wheelhouse. To see.
Well, it's very light on the. It's not hysterical by any means.
No.
But it is. I mean, there's one scene where, in particular, where it's kind of like, oh gosh, but like it's hard to hear you talk to your sister that way. But so Maria, the more flirtatious sister, when Agnes's doctor shows up, Maria's all about him, and then she's like trying to get on him, and then we get a flashback, and we realize that Maria had had an affair with the doctor, and her husband found out and couldn't deal with it. So he goes and like commits seppuku.
But he lives, clearly.
He lives, but it's a good scene because she won't help him. Like he's like, please help me. And she looks at him like, boy, bye. I thought that was really interesting. Um, okay, the maid, Anna.
Mm-hmm.
She is the only person in the house who seems to have any like sort of care. And she's very like touchy-feely, which is a plot point because both Maria and Karen are talking about how they just didn't grow up like that. Like they don't like being touched, and why don't we ever touch? Why aren't we more intimate? And then you have the maid running around um, trying to do that, specifically when Agnes is in bed, like in agony and she's in pain. Anna pulls out her big old titty and like sucres her, which I'm sure there's a history of that in certain cultures is considered like normal, but it was very interesting to watch, and it made me think of the movie Dirty Love with Jenny McCarthy.
Oh God.
When one of her breasts are hanging out, and Carmen Electra was like, "Girl, you got your big old titty hanging out."
Uh,
But
uh,
I thought that was very interesting because I got like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard not to get like lesbianic vibes from it,
yeah.
but maybe
Like
that wasn't the
about
intention.
intimacy between women and familial bonds, and how she's kind of taken Anna kind of has to assume this motherly, even sisterly figure that the other two can't fulfill
Yeah,
for her, that I think doesn't even again, where the film at the moment where the film ends, it's a flashback scene. I think that's where a lot of the power really resonates from everything else. It's to me, it's like a film that's a little bit like a bruise, where after the impact, you see the damage. Is how the end of this film feels to me. But yeah, it's hard not to feel the lesbianic vibes. Also between the moment where Maria Liv Ullmann is trying to, because they're also representative of different things, because their sister, who's we're told by that priest is like even more spiritual than I am, and kind of comes back like Jesus for one sequence. Liv Ullmann is overly flirtatious, but there's an emptiness in it. And then Ingrid Tulin is, sexually, emotionally, intimately repressed. And when they're trying to come together, it almost seems like they're trying to make out. My dad's like, God, this is uncomfortable.
yeah, it was uncomfortable. My next note is Agnes, the dying sister. She needed to go on ahead and die because we get like three scenes of her in bed, just like, I'm in pain, someone help me. Like, and then her breathing is really labored. Child, just die. Okay, so Karen, her husband is vile. Like, he's just gross and mean. And they're having dinner, and I forget how she words it, but she kind of asks him, like, what is the plan for tonight? Like, she's trying to
No,
ascertain. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I
No,
think that's her.
oh, right. They're the two of them are having dinner, and Karen's the bitchy sister, and it becomes clear to her that he's thinking like he wants to be intimate with her that evening, and you can just see in her face she's like, I would rather die than touch this man. And this lady, she happens to break a wine glass, and she keeps a piece of the broken wine glass, and after she gets into her dressing gown, this lady takes that broken glass and mutilates her genitals,
Cuts her vulva. Yeah. Very Lars von Trier.
and then gets into bed with her husband, who's like across the room looking at her like he's ready to get some. And then we see her open her legs, and she's just a bloody mess, and she smears it on her face like, you want it now. I thought that was such a good scene. It's really hard to watch, but
Yeah,
yeah, there's so, I mean, I could talk about that for an hour. But yeah, that was really good. Um,
I agree. Uh,
then Karen and Maria, the two surviving sisters, are having a talk, and Maria is telling her sister, "Why can't we be close? Why can't we move forward and be more like intimate with each other?" And at first, Karen seems like maybe she thinks that's like a nice idea, and maybe she wants to do that, and then she just like flips and basically tells her sister, like, do you know how much I hate you? Like I hate everything about this. I hate being touched. I don't want anyone to talk to me about shit. And I just, that really resonated with me too. Like, but it's so miserable.
It is so sumptuous, and the use of color is very important
Yes.
because the crimson room, which reminds me of a scene in Jane Eyre as well. But like even the blankets on the dying sister, every time she puts that red blanket, and I think the segues using the color using crimson also suggests like kind of death. Because we're always looking backwards in those transitions, and she's slowly being consumed by this red blanket, etc. And then the flashback scene, which is out of Agnes's diary, like at a happier time with the sisters and Anna were together, and they're all in, very glaring white, and they run and go swing on that swing. I like the use of
That would actually be a beautiful poster to have, is the image of the four ladies in white outside. And it's like, and I think I was reading that's a reference to like a popular painting or something, but
oh, I believe it, yeah.
or maybe that was like on like a Swedish postage stamp or something like that. But yeah, I thought that imagery was beautiful. That towards the end of the film, there's like a dream sequence where Agnes comes back from the dead and she's
Like
trying.
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's like but freaked out, except of course Anna, who's there to like, caress her. But
Yeah,
yeah,
she calls her sisters in one by one, and basically Karen's like, maybe this would matter if I loved you, but I don't.
yeah. And in the end, after the funeral, after they've decided they're gonna sell the house and get rid of everything, initially Maria is like, well, we should give Anna something. She spent like 12 years taking care of our sister. We should give her a little severance pay and let her take a memento. But then the vile husband of Karen says no. Like, she's young, she can find work. We're not responsible for taking care of her in the future.
He's
So
like, she
here's,
had 12 easy years. Like,
yeah. And then they offer her a memento and she says no. And then the husband's like, oh, look at her trying to be noble. Like, ugh. But yeah, this movie overall made me feel, I mean, I think the feeling it invokes is really about how we feel about intimacy and getting our needs met in many different ways. And what really resonated with me is I often feel like so much of like intimacy involves other people's needs. And I think it's such a weird thing to be so involved in someone else's like intimate needs, because then it's like, well, what about my own needs? And I think I related to Karen just because it feels like that lady, like she has a lot she's dealing with and needs to process, and in the midst of that is being pulled in these directions that, I mean, I think many of us could relate to that. And it's not an easy watch. It's not a pleasurable movie. It is very well done, and I think it's pretty provocative.
well, the forced intimacy of family and
I
these
wouldn't
forced.
watch it with family.
I did.
I wouldn't watch it with like a significant other probably, but I think it's yeah, it was good. I would give it like 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean, not everything by Bergman is perfect, of course, but consistently, he's just a phenomenal director. Even though arguably he was also kind of a terrible human, but I don't know, Liv Ullmann, Ingrid Thulin, Harriet Anderson, the three of them. Yeah, I don't know. There's a level of perfection to me in this film that sure it's not a pleasurable experience, but it's cinematically pleasurable for certain.
Sure. All right. Well, what do you have going on this week?
Uh, so many things, more interviews of for international film features. We have Violent Night off the top of my head, I know is coming out this week. I think we see that Monday.
Of course, I want to watch that movie. I don't know anything about it, but it's a studio picture, right?
Yes, yes, it
Hmm.
is. There's something called Number, excuse me, Number 10. I'm forgetting who directed that, but that sounds interesting. And I'm of course excited to see Avatar: The Way of Water, but I think we're still 2 weeks out from a screening of that. But yeah, that's about it.
All right. Well, if you don't have anything else to say, we will end this
Adjourn.
recording. We will end our journey. Is that what you said?
Oh, I said adjourn.
Oh, the meeting is adjourned. All right, well, ta-ta for now.